Good afternoon, everyone. This is Manali Chaudhary. Today I am here to discuss few points about the issues and prospects of 21st century that are being faced by the teachers and the learners. What are the impacts? Okay, so there are a lot of agendas that have come up, and I have selected some of them amongst the many, and I would like to discuss about them. I'll begin with a quote by Alice Wellington Rollins. The test of a good teacher is not how many questions he asks his pupils that they will answer readily, but how many questions he inspires them to ask him which he finds it hard to answer. We have been primarily focusing on trying to instill knowledge. That is the core duty of a teacher, to instill knowledge in their students, impart knowledge, and to make them smarter, to train them and to make them the best in our subject area. But the one thing that we mostly skip is, are our students eligible enough to question us back? Because when we conduct classes, we must have observed that our students mainly, are just listening to us. They are just listeners. There is no inquisitiveness in them. So we need to evoke that inquisitiveness in them through our teaching. We need to make it more difficult for them, the concepts, because it's too easy, the approach is too easy, and they don't find anything difficult. They don't have that self-interest within themselves that they would cross-question us. So as a teacher, as a facilitator, as an educator, we need to instill that capability in our students wherein they would cross-question us, instead of the teachers posing questions on the students, which is extremely normal. That is what we always do. We teach them and then we question them. But when it is for the students to question us, we barely, listen any students, or we barely get any response from them. So our focus should gradually shift towards making our students more, like I said, they should have the spirit, they should have the curiosity in them to learn more than we teach them. They should not constrain themselves to just knowing and learning what is there in the academics. We need to instill the interest in them to learn beyond the books. Okay, that is when we make them more competent. That is what 21st century skill demands. Okay, so now I would like to shift to the next slide. One second. Okay, I would like to throw a little light upon the ancient education system. Although we are all well acquainted and we all have read it during our social studies classes, thanks to our history teachers, we all are aware of the Vedic education, that era, okay, the Gurukul system, and somewhere our students, they are much away from the disciplinary concept. If we remember, we as students were much more disciplined and keen learners. If we just go back just a decade, okay, if I talk about my schooling, I clearly remember that no matter how much we enjoyed our school life, we were more focused during our classes. The focus, the primary attention was on grasping knowledge. When it came to grasping knowledge, we ascertained that our attention does not shift and we listen to our educators. That is somewhere missing, and that was found during the Vedic era. Okay, I may not, if I'm not wrong, because I have the history teacher sitting over here, but we remember At the same time, we have evolved. And what I'm talking about is way back. Okay, education has evolved, we have traversed a long way since then, and today we cannot talk about the typical Vedic education. Because today we are focusing and talking here about 21st century skills. So, what are basically the 21st century skills that we need to imbibe in us and we need to inculcate in our students so that they propagate? We cannot just rely upon rote learning method because as we are all aware of the NEP 2020, we are here trying to make our students, global. We cannot just constrain them to educate them about what's happening in the nation and just to seek jobs, because when we teach, we somewhere feel that our students are just acquiring degrees because they want a job to secure themselves. But is it the only requirement of today's generation? No. There are a lot of skills, extra skills, which they need to imbibe in themselves so that they can learn better, they can grow better, they can be a part of the competent, highly competent era that we also are a part of. Because we as teachers, we know that we are undergoing several trainings and the only purpose behind those training is we are skilled enough to train the extra talented 21st century kids, because we know that they are somewhere far more proficient than us when it comes to knowledge of technology. I think I would admit that there have been students who have taught me how to enhance my skills when it comes to technology, because they know more than us, and we have to upgrade ourselves in that way, because we are teaching a generation, and for the upcoming years when we will be teaching much more skilled and talented students, they are already upgraded, because today even a 2-year-old child knows how to operate a smartphone. I don't remember that I was able to draw a straight line when I was 2-year-old. So that is how it is changing. That is the rapidity with which it is changing. So are we kind of upgrading ourselves with the same pace? Because we need to develop that mindset. We need to, boost ourselves in a similar fashion. We cannot sit back with the laid back techniques that we have been following. Come to the class, teach the students, just get the concept inside them and prepare them for the exams. Fine, we know we have some targets to achieve. I totally understand that. But we have to train our students to be skill oriented. Are we training them for that? If I talk about the AIL, Art Integrated Learning, why do you think we are integrating art today? Why has it become an essential part of learning today? There are too many arts teachers sitting over here. How many students do you feel are motivated to learn through artistic skills? How many are highly enriched in artistic skills? Handful, right? Just a handful of students are there. But if we just take out a little extra time to, make things more alluring, make things more attractive and presentable, and, through the amalgamation of art into teaching, integrate art into teaching, the different forms of arts from across India, then it becomes much more entertaining for the students. Because I know while I had given this project to my students, they were much more enthusiastic. Now that enthusiasm was instilled and imparted by me as a facilitator. I had to motivate them enough that they took interest in the project that I gave to them, that is the Art Integrated project. They did it out of sheer interest and not because it was an imposition on them or because it just had to be done. Okay, so now moving on. To the next slide. Here's a video. I would like all of you to go through this video.
Hello and welcome to Teachings and Education, 21st Century Learning and Life Skills. Credit and information found at Partnership for 21st Century Learning. A link to their site will be provided below. Teachers must help their students develop specific work and life skills. Now, why should educators care about 21st century learning? Schools have a responsibility to nurture their young students into functioning 21st century citizens. 21st century skills are absolutely essential for everyday living. These skills are necessary for life, work, and citizenship. Understand that life outside of school is nothing like the classroom environment and requires different ways to succeed. Teaching these skills to students will help them become successful later on in their lives. Partnership for 21st Century Learning offers a framework that focuses on student outcomes, which are your goals and learning objectives. There are 4 components, and the first one is content knowledge and 21st century themes. School curriculum will have students learning subjects such as mathematics, science, world geography, civics, reading and writing, and more. Students must master these core disciplines just to graduate high school. Students must learn at a high level by recognizing and understanding the 21st century themes within these key subjects. Environmental literacy and all the factors that affect it, economic, business, entrepreneurial, and civic themes, global awareness, and communicating around the world. And lastly, health literacy and taking responsibilities for one's personal health. Now on to the second student outcome, which is learning and innovation skills. These skills are broken down into 4 C's. The first C is creativity. Students must come up with innovative ideas and then put those ideas into action. Next is communication. Teach students to articulate their thoughts effectively using oral and written communication strategies. The third C is for collaboration. Have your students practice soft skills and working efficiently with diverse teams. And the last C is for critical thinking. That is being able to analyze and evaluate evidence, as well as use deductive reasoning for any of life's situations. We now move on to the third of 4 student outcomes: information, media, and technology skills. Students need to be able to access all of the information available to them, and there's a lot of information out there. Although students may be adept in social media, our children should have an understanding of media messaging and how to create media products. Teachers still need to keep students up to date with the rapid changes in technology. They should be able to use digital technologies as communication and networking tools, as well as have an understanding of the dangers of technology. Students can use the technology that they have to manage information in a beneficial way. And the last student outcome, which is life and career skills. And there are many careers out there. Now, when a student enters the workforce, they must be flexible and able to adapt to changes. As adults, we know how important it is to adapt to new and challenging situations. Some more life and career skills, besides being flexible, include having initiative and self-direction, social and cross-cultural skills, having productivity and accountability, and lastly, leadership and responsibility. After student outcomes, 21st century learning is broken down into support systems for schools. First off, schools should have 21st century standards. These standards should emphasize understanding and depth of knowledge, while building relationships and understanding across various academic subjects and themes. Second, assessments of 21st century skills. This includes the big 3, summative, formative, and diagnostic assessments. Also included should be standardized test evaluations. Third on the list is 21st century curriculum and instruction. That means teaching 21st century skills in the context of the key subjects and core disciplines. Next up are the 21st century learning environments. Here, teachers should create real-world type learning environments for their students, and they can do this through project-based learning and cooperative learning experiences. And lastly, we have professional development for 21st century learning. These types of professional development for teachers should be directed on various ways. Teachers can integrate these 21st century skills into their classroom. So, right now I just want to say thank you for your time. Subscribe to this channel, check for resources below, and please like and share this video.
I think we have gathered much from the video, but just the crux of the video. We did see, if you were seeing the video actually, we are here talking about a global change. Like I just said in my introductory speech, that globally when we talk about change, one of the biggest barriers that we face is communication skills. Are we able to enhance our students to interact and present themselves on an international plethora? Are we making them smart in their approach? Are we able to present themselves when it comes to representing their inherent talent? Are we actually working in that direction? We talk of skills. We are kind of upgrading ourselves, but that upgradation should get reflected in our teaching process as well. Just by watching videos or by undergoing several trainings, I don't think we'll be able to bring changes. But by implementing what we learn and making our students work in that direction, in a progressive direction, only then can we attain what the world demands. If we just train our students to, secure a job for themselves and lead an ordinary life, because to me the definition of an ordinary life is to just secure a job, 9 to 5 job, spend time with your family, and just be satisfied that at the end of the day, I've had a happy, healthy life. No, stepping beyond your comfort zone is what the 21st century learners should try. If we stay in our own comfort zone and we are totally relaxed about it, like let's talk of the, without much pun intended, the government teachers, the most highly paid teachers. But if we look at the standard of education being imparted to the students, we are witnessing that the standard of education being imparted to them is not at all competent. Okay, they are just merely getting their degrees. So just acquiring degrees is not learning. Learning means growing within. So are we enabling our students to grow within? Are we fostering those changes in them? Are we upgraded enough? Because today we talk of a time where there are so many platforms, like there's Facebook, YouTube, blogs, vlogs. So we can also create our own websites. But are we actually trying to adapt these changes, or are we just talking about them? Because to be very honest, when we try to teach, the PRT teachers, the primary level teachers would agree that audio visual has a different impact on the learners. It helps us learn better. Even when we watch videos, rather than just listening to a concept, when we watch, we understand better, we remember better. But every time, we can't just, rely upon external sources. Why not be the creator of some blog of your own? We are exceptionally talented educators over here. We are all, well trained in our own subjects. So why can't we just just take a step ahead, move a step ahead, and create our own vlogs or our own websites, and we can ask the students to just follow them, and through it, it will draw students more nearer, because that is what this generation requires. Just literal mugging up of answers doesn't help. That is what we still find in the students. A day before exams, they are literally mugging up their answers, they write it on the papers and then they forget. But is that learning? Is that going to have an impact on them in the long run? I'm sure it won't. Remembrance, how do you remember? It is only through visuals. And to create those visuals is upon the teacher. You can have your own identity if you create your own websites. Okay, it's not necessary how many viewers you have. It's necessary that you are upgrading yourself. You are moving in the direction where you will be able to train properly, appropriately, in a skilled manner, the 21st century learners. Now moving on to some of the issues that the 21st century teachers have been facing of late. So I would just highlight some the main things. Here we are talking about the temperament of students. We can see words here like rudeness, argumentation, disobedience. Okay, so of late, these kind of behavioral issues are quite frequent amongst the students. Thanks to COVID-19, we have totally lost the emotional connection that we used to have with our students, because we also need to connect emotionally with our students to make them attain targets. Because when we are connecting to our students through a screen, that physical bonding is somewhere lacking, that is creating a barrier. And when these students come back, they have already lost the discipline that they had in themselves. They are somewhere less, I would say, they are somewhere lacking concentration. They have lost the attention span. Basically, the average attention span of a listener, be it the students or be it adults, is 10 to 15 minutes. So now that they have lost that span, with just connecting or listening to us through those videos, somewhere we don't even know they are listening to us or not. And then when they come to school, they don't talk to teachers properly. Their behavior needs a lot of modification. They are they are less interactive to the teachers. They don't want to listen to the teachers. They don't want to follow the guidelines set by the teachers. So this is one of the problems which we have been facing of late. The behavioral issue is a big problem that is being faced by the teachers. Somewhere, when we try to connect to the students, with our students, if we talk about building an emotional bonding with our students, are we not crossing connecting and crossing that limit? You want to be friendly with your student. You want the student to grasp things well. But there are certain limitations to it. So as a facilitator, are we somewhere crossing that limit because of which the students forget the restrictions that are imposed on them while they talk to their teachers? Are we somewhere failing to draw that line which makes them so comfortable to talk in any accent, with any body language which is inappropriate? No, we should learn to draw that barrier as well, because they will have to face an outer world where that easygoing manner and attitude will not be accepted at all. We have to train them for that world. Okay, where everybody is judgmental and one cannot afford making mistakes. Then, here it is talking about, if you see family upbringing, culture. That is something which we don't have a control upon. While dealing with students, if we are trying to deal with a student who has, who has a lot of issues, it's not just constricted to behavioral issues, but it is also about the way they talk or the way they present themselves in front of teachers. So, therein, if we try to counsel the students, we understand that the kind of behavior that they display is because of the family upbringing. Then, when we try to connect to the parents, we understand that the parents are not interested in the teaching learning process of the students. I would like to relate to an incident which, because I think that would give a clearer picture. The other day, while I was conducting the report card, so there were parents waiting, and this was for the first time that I met all the parents. So I wanted to establish a good bond with them so that I can discuss the progress of the child one to one and in detail with each and every parent who were present. So, out of the blue, one of the parents reacted in an absolutely, which flabbergasted me. I was totally astonished by the behavior of that parent because he started shouting from nowhere, yelling literally that why do I have to come to collect the report card of my child? I don't have so much time. You have wasted 15 minutes of my daily routine, and I think my child is in 11th grade and is eligible enough to understand the pros and cons of his own progress. And I was for a moment taken aback because I didn't know how to deal with that parent. How can I deal with a parent who doesn't take interest in their own child's upbringing? So here is a clear picture as to what kind of impact, psychological impact it is having on the child, because I am facing that parent for maybe just 10 to 15 minutes, but the child is living with that kind of a parent every day. So now you can very well imagine what kind of psychological impact it is having on the child and what kind of behavioral problems the child will develop with the passage of time. Because they are growing watching that kind of behavior. They are growing with with the mindset that it's okay for a male person to talk to a female person in that manner. There are so many other things which get reflected. So these are some minute things maybe, but yes, they also determine the attitude of a child. So when we deal with different students today and we face many problems, most of the time it is because of their upbringing. We all are in fact a reflection of the value system that has been imbibed in us by our parents. I think you all will agree to this. Somewhere, the kind of behavior that we display, it is because of the upbringing and the manners that have been inculcated in us by our parents. So we cannot wholly depend on a facilitator to modify the behavior of a student. It also depends a lot on the parents, for which we also need to connect to the parents to make them understand that the way you behave has a long time, it has an impression on your child. Okay? Okay. So here we are seeing curriculum overload, lack of teamwork, empathy and support between students. Sometimes we give them project work and we ask them to work as a team. I have been working with the quality circle, and some of my colleagues here would agree that building a team is not an easy task. Why team building is important? Because the child has to understand what are the limitations as a leader and how to create a balance and achieve the target on time. So that is extremely essential, and that we can do by assigning tasks developed from a very early age. Yes, today we are facing barriers because of the COVID situation. But if we inculcate this habit from the very beginning, from elementary, I'm talking about primary, pre-primary, group work, group projects, they learn. And then when they reach higher classes, it becomes easier for them to navigate in that direction. There we don't have to do hand holding. It should be because we all know, that when a child is at a growing age, in the very beginning phase of their learning, whatever we instill within them, they grow with it. That gets propagated within. And that cannot be instilled easily when they are already reaching middle school. Okay, because they are already growing with that mindset and that is quite prominent in them by that time, and they have no idea as how to work in a team. So teamwork is not about inculcating something when they are in senior classes. That has to be from the very beginning. Like our upbringing. If our parents don't treat us well as a child, we grow with that behavior. Okay, and by the time we are teenagers, we already get accustomed to that behavior. Right? And it gets very difficult to change that person. Like we see in some of the adults, they are adamant, they are rude, they are aggressive. Okay, they don't want to mold themselves, they don't want to admit that their behavior is wrong and cannot be accepted in a particular environment. Why do you think it happens? It happens because they have not been checked on time. Their parents have not checked that behavior, their facilitators, their educators have not checked their behavior. They have simply been ignorant towards that behavior. And that is why the child develops into someone with an inappropriate behavior. So everything, be it teamwork, be it behavior, be it temperament, these are some of the big challenges that we are facing with the passage of time. Yes, on one hand, I would say Vedic education. Vedic education at least had made the learners disciplined. They had a disciplinarian approach. Okay, waking up at 4 a.m. and learning. All those habits are somewhere long gone. Of course, the kind of lifestyle that we are having today does not permit that kind of education system anymore. Waking up at 4 or asking a child to wake up at 4 and study, because most of the time they sleep at 12 o'clock after finishing their projects. So that's not possible, we know. But then behavioral issues that can be dealt with from an early age. Developing teamwork that can be done at an early age. Everything begins early. The sooner it begins, the better it propagates. Okay. The more solidification. When we talk of solidification, this is what it means. From an early age. Okay. Okay. Here are some challenges that we've been facing. I think I've already discussed much about most of them, like knowing our students well, understanding their abilities. Now, this point, understanding their abilities and capabilities, I think we as teachers of Varsity High School have somewhere excelled ourselves in this. Because during the exams or before the exams, we segregate our students based on their learning capabilities. We train them especially for boards or for any other important exams by segregating them into categories. This is also done in some of the ICSE schools in my knowledge, where there are special classes arranged for slow learners. Okay, because we cannot use negative words for students, so we call them slow learners, where the challenges are more, but when we know that these kids are slow learners, they adapt things a bit slower than the rest of the lot, it becomes more easier for us to train those students, and we adapt special methods to make them better performers. Yes, motivating and encouraging. Of course, that goes hand in hand. If we demoralize a student, if the way we talk to them, because it's a two-way process. When I talk of temperament, when I talk of behavior, it is a two-way process. I also need to mind my own language while I am talking to a child. Because today we are teaching a generation who can easily stand up and tell you, look at the way you are talking to me and you expect me to behave well. Yes, there are some students as well who question a teacher's behavior. We are answerable today for our behavior. So we need to be calculative when we talk, when we scold, when we are trying to correct the inappropriate attitude of a child. So we have a lot on our shoulders, we have a lot on our mind. We cannot even scold a child, using any word which might not be appropriate according to some guidelines set by some schools. Whereas the behavior of the child is inappropriate. So how can we change that? By engaging them into positive activities, drawing them closer to students who are more into performing and doing better in their lives. And yes, effective communication channel between management, parents and students. Bridging the gap between management, parents and students. The use of the word management is intentional because when I was talking about the limitations imposed on a teacher, here management plays a vital role. Because some of the times when we deal with different kinds of students with, inappropriate behavior, and we have certain limitations as to how we should deal with the student, then the role of the management, it steps in, and we have to ensure that the child is dealt with in a tactful manner. So that tactfulness is the role of the management. Okay, here somewhere we teachers are obliterated or we are constrained. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra. So that little extra, how can we, it's kind of nourishing a child with that little extra. You must have followed that CBSE of late is bringing up several projects back to back to develop that little extra in the students. It has even made it essential for CBSE schools to introduce skill-based learning. And there are several skills which have already been introduced by CBSE on their website. And I think the moment the NEP 2020 gets implemented, we have to focus on not just that little extra, but a more than extra. So we need to, by that time, upgrade ourselves a lot. Now here we are talking about some of the essential characteristics that we can imbibe in us as 21st century educators. Now if you look at all the points, we have mostly discussed, and I have basically mostly discussed and covered all the points, but one point I would like to lay emphasis on, I will talk about 2 points here, inclusive and network. Inclusive. We do make students with certain special needs a part of the regular curriculum, and we make them feel that they need to, they are equally competent and they are not lagging behind. We in our classrooms also have such students where we know that they are slow learners, but by making them a part of the regular curriculum, we try to we try to pull the maximum, or I would say we try to extricate the maximum out of them. That is quite difficult, that is quite tasking for the teachers. We do understand that. But it is also essential that the students don't feel left out. Okay, they don't feel that they are somewhere incompetent. They should not develop with an inferiority attitude in themselves. That why am I not being made a part of regular curriculum? What is wrong with me? The child shouldn't be growing with this attitude. But when they are made a part of such, a normal environment, when we provide a normal environment to students with special needs, then it helps them to generate their abilities and be the best. Networking here is not just limited to our country. Networking here also talks about connecting globally. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's not necessary that you always need to make friends with people whom you know. That is a platform where you can actually interact with people from other nations as well. And how is it going to help you in bettering your education? Like, how can you be a better educator by connecting with people from other globes? Let me tell you, I have some friends who are stay in different continents as well, and that has helped me emerge with an open-mindedness. It has helped me evolve as a human, because when I look at the kind of lifestyle that they lead, the way their children are educated, the kind of learning strategies that are being, teaching strategies that are being adapted in the schools there, I discuss it with those people, and I somewhere try to, make a point of those things so that I can discuss it with my teachers and we can implement those changes. Because unless and until we are outgrowing our own potential, we will not be able to reflect it in our attitude and grow as educators, and nor will be able to, pass it on to our students. Okay, so quickly moving on to some of the methodologies, because we are lagging time, so I will explain it through the help of some videos which might help you understand these methodologies better. It can be made a part of our teaching curriculum, and maybe it will be helpful in the long run as well. So just have a look.
The flipped classroom is a new method of teaching that is turning the traditional classroom on its head. Every day, thousands of teachers deliver the exact same lesson in class to millions of students. Every night, millions of students sit over the exact same homework, trying to figure out how to solve it. The flipped classroom is turning this upside down. Traditionally, students listen to lectures and take tests in class, and read textbooks and work on problem sets at home. In flipped teaching, students first study the topic by themselves, typically using video lessons on YouTube, and then apply the knowledge by solving problems and doing practical work in class. Modern schools who've flipped their classroom report many benefits. 1. It allows all students to learn at their own pace, as videos can be watched again. 2. It's more efficient, as students enter the classroom prepared to contribute. 3. It enriches the classroom, as more time can be spent on group work and projects. 4. Doing homework in class allows students to help each other, which benefits both the advanced and less advanced learners. Flipping also brings changes for teachers. Traditionally, teachers engage most with the confident students who ask questions. Flipping allows teachers to target the students who really need help, instead of just those who are confident. Also, instead of instructing from the front, teachers guide on the side. This allows them to work more closely with individuals or small groups. Teachers that are not great presenters can use third-party videos to explain the concept and focus on methods of teaching that suit their style, such as project work or experiments. Once video lectures are made available online, teachers don't need to give the same lecture over and over again. Again, they gain more time to focus on the needs of their class. Many scholars also argue that the flipped classroom model promotes equal learning opportunities, as all kids get the same attention when doing their homework. Currently, kids with caring parents, older siblings at home, or expensive private tutors have a clear advantage over those who don't. Let us know what you think. If you were a teacher, tell us if this model will be possible in your classroom. If you were a student, let us know if you would prefer learning in a flipped classroom.
So this was all about flipped classroom. I would have discussed it at a greater length, but we are falling short of time, so I will quickly move on to the next methodology that can be implemented.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Project-Based Learning. Capture your students' attention with real-world problems. Project-based learning is often abbreviated to the acronym PBL, which will be used throughout the video. So, why should educators use PBL in their classroom? Projects are often assessed through presentations. Having students present more often helps students develop better communication skills. Many times, project assignments allow students to work with their hands and complete tasks. It's important for them to have developed some of these 21st century life skills. Projects are assigned as group activities. Being able to work with others is a necessary component of countless fields of work. PBL really comes in handy for those situations where students are just plain old bored of lectures. The best part of PBL is that it increases student engagement. Students will actually enjoy working on these projects and be much more pleasant while working. Who is PBL meant for? Now, it can be used for any student. However, it is most effective on certain types of students. At-risk students benefit the most from project-based learning. These students obviously struggle with typical classroom learning. PBL can be used for many different classes, but PBL is most prevalent in social studies, science classes, and art classes as well. One common misconception
Teachers
is
of
that
social
project-based
studies can
learning
make a
is
note of
only
this.
meant for upper grade level courses. However, PBL may be incorporated from grades kindergarten through 12th grade. How to implement PBL in our classroom. Every class project should begin with a driving question that is specifically aligned to a learning goal. The level of complexity of the driving question should be appropriate for the type of students in the classroom. The next step for implementation is the inquiry process. Students should apply learned knowledge, ask and answer critical thinking questions, and locate resources. In the next step, students find a solution to the driving question. Here is where students solve the problems, oftentimes with creations, models, and presentations. And the last step is to allow students to make their projects available to the public, to give students a voice. Now that we've done all this talking about PBL, let's take a look at some classroom examples. Here are a few of my personal creations that I'm very proud of. This is a project where I asked students to build a model of the Titanic and examine the ways the ship could have been built much better. It is a 6th grade social studies project and includes reasoning, writing, and research. The following project asks students to find the proper measurements and create a scale-free of a 2-bedroom hip model house. It was for a 12th grade math analysis course. And the last project asked students to convert from feet to inches and use the measurements to paint and create a miniature basketball court. It was actually used for an at-risk Algebra 1 course. Right now, I would just like to say thank you.
So these are some of the parameters which are in a crux. They are talking about the project-based learning. I will quickly switch over to 2 more methodologies, and then I will just switch over to the prospects. Okay.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, Cooperative Learning. Now, let's begin with the question of why should educators use cooperative learning in the classroom? Teachers should not come to class with the same lesson plans each and every day. Change things up. Allow students to hear a voice of someone different. Allow them to hear the voice of their peers. This way, students get a break from boring teacher lectures. Cooperative learning is a great strategy because it's all about the students and their own thoughts and ideas. The students are actually the center of learning, not the teacher. As teachers, we have a responsibility to prepare students for most careers which happen to require people to work in groups with others. Cooperative learning is a key component of 21st century life skills. Ultimately, we are smarter together as a group than we are apart as individuals. A common question is how do we group students for cooperative learning? It is best to group students deliberately, and the first thing to consider when grouping students are their academic abilities and their test scores. So consider grouping students by performance level, homogeneous grouping for students with similar performance levels, and heterogeneous grouping for different performance levels. Student safety is always the #1 priority. Avoid bullying situations. Therefore, consider grouping students for harmonious and safe environments. Another possibility for grouping is a random approach. In that case, there is no particular rhyme or reason for placing any one student in a group as opposed to placing them in another group. Random grouping is sometimes used when teachers are looking to shake things up. When students are grouped together, things can get out of control pretty quickly. To keep order, assign students specific roles within the group. Therefore, assign responsibilities to its members. Always remember, the best grouping scenario is one where students are both safe and learning. Now it's time to look at some classroom examples for our teachers. It should be noted that there are many different strategies. The first strategy is think, pair, share. Students are first given a question to work on. Then they are grouped into pairs. Once grouped, they can compare answers and discuss their different perspectives. Sometimes they are asked to come up with a single answer and then share that answer with the entire class. The jigsaw learning model. Students are assigned into different groups. The first group they are assigned to is the home group. Each student is given a different topic to study. That student joins other students with the same topic, the expert group, and shares ideas on that topic. Lastly, students come back to the home group and share what they learned from the expert group. There are many different project-based learning examples that allow students to work in groups and solve different real-world problems. Project-based learning should be aligned to standards and based around a driving inquiry question. Before we finish, let's consider some cautions and dangers for cooperative learning. First off, whenever students are placed in groups, there's a tendency to talk. Students will have conversations because students tend to socialize when given a chance. So teachers must be vigilant and keep a close eye on students. Also, group sizes should be no larger than 3 or 4 students. The large number of students placed in a group, the less work that gets done. In psychology, it's called the Ringelmann effect. For cooperative learning to work efficiently, require submission of student work. Make sure these lessons have learning goals and objectives that students must meet. Lastly, because cooperative learning is group work, some students will look to take advantage of that and do little to no work. and allow their peers to do all the work. As a teacher, we must ensure individual accountability to each student. Right now, I want to say thank you for
Okay, these are some of the methodologies that can be imbibed by the teachers while they teach. I wanted to emphasize on a few more, so I will just quickly move on to the last slide. Can we just quickly move on to the last slide, sir? Is it possible? Because they are talking about the prospects, and I would quickly like to summarize that. Next. Yes. These are some of the prospects as the main topic of the project is about the issues and prospects. So we need to develop these skills in our students so that they can, they are more channelized and they are more integrated and more focused. If we talk about this agility and adaptability, when we were seeing the video of cooperative learning, agility and adaptability is one of the things which is primarily required when we talk about cooperative learning. Because as a part of a group, you need to be more flexible and adaptable to the moods and the requirements of your teammates and act accordingly. You need to learn how to adjust amongst different people. That is the primary requirement of a learner when we talk about cooperative learning, and that can only be inculcated in a child if we try these methodologies in our classrooms, be it flipped classroom, be it project-based learning or cooperative learning. We have competency-based education as well. So these are some of the important skills of the 21st century, which the 21st century educators should adapt in themselves. And these are some of the prospects. So I would like to wrap up. So if there are any queries, teachers may please put forward their queries, or I would like to wind up today's training session. There were a lot more things which I wanted to discuss in detail, maybe some other time. Thank you. Do you have any questions? You can pose questions if you want. I guess we are running short of time, that's why there are no questions. There's a vacuum here. Anyways, I would share the PPT with all of you. I would request officer to do that if it's possible. So thank you everyone for your time and attention.